for another edition of the ReaderHouse Author Roundtable. How you doing? I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. W.G. Williams has a background in film, TV, and journalism, and during his lifetime, something new and exciting happened. The internet and email. He was one of the first to share funny thoughts and stories every single day, and he saved them. So now he's written a book. It's called 20 Years of Internet Humor, Volume 1, and Other Interesting Things. Tell me more about your background, sir.
Well, I started in journalism as a newspaper and photographer and reporter, and worked my way through college doing that. I got a bachelor's and a master's in broadcasting and journalism. And then I went to the University of Texas, where I managed a TV network and directed some TV shows and taught television classes and worked on a doctorate. And then I got a job offer in Ohio. I didn't know it was Ohio. I thought I was going to Kentucky because it was Bowling Green State University, and I had heard of Bowling Green, Kentucky. And I'd always wanted to live in the mountains, so I took the job. They were starting a new TV station, and I discovered I was back in the flatlands of Ohio, which sort of surprised me. And I was there for 3 years, directing instructional television and special projects for Bowling Green State University. And I decided to go into business for myself. Okay. So I moved to Washington, D.C. and set up a consulting firm for communications and produced a bunch of films for the White House, for federal government, Postal Service, Army, Navy, that sort of thing. And then when FEMA was first created, I was asked to take a 1-year assignment as their first director of news and information.
Oh, how was that?
That was the best job I've ever had in my life. That was absolutely marvelous.
Yeah.
But then they changed administrations, and I was in the wrong party, so I got booted out.
Right.
And then after 20 years there, I became a father. I had 2 young daughters, and I had grown up in a military household and moved all over the country and actually went to 14 schools before I got out of high school.
Oh, boy.
And I thought, well, I'd like for my kids not to have that. And Washington isn't a great place to grow up right now. So we moved back to Ohio, where my wife had family, so that they could grow up among aunts and uncles and cousins and friends. And I've been here ever since. And since there's no great demand for TV producers in Northwest Ohio, I became a financial advisor, insurance and investments, and did that for 30 years.
That's really different from everything else you had done before.
No question about it. But it was a steady paycheck, and I didn't object to that.
Yeah.
And now I've put this book out, and I'm trying to retire from the financial planning business and concentrate on the book sales.
Well, it's interesting because you were using the internet in a way that people hadn't figured out yet. You know, you were sending out a thought for the day every day, not realizing the impact doing something like that could have.
Exactly right. I didn't know. I'd love to say I had it all planned out, but no, I just stumbled into that as well.
So you just said, oh, here's this new thing called email.
Right. And I couldn't, I was managing a bunch of salespeople in Ohio and Michigan. And they all had email, but they never read it. So I started sending this thing out, and they started reading it, and it was humorous. So they shared it with their clients, and the clients liked it, and they made more sales. And the clients said, could we get on the list too? And so there's no postage for email. Why not? And so today I'm still sending it out 5 days a week to hundreds of people all over the country that I've never met before. But also I've got readers in Berlin and Rome and Australia and India. So it's sort of spread.
And every thought over the last 20 years that you shared, you wrote down somewhere? So you
Oh, yeah, I kept them all well, I'd like to say I kept them all, but there's some significant gaps that I would love to be able to retrieve, but I haven't been able to yet. But I'm still looking at the list. I've still got about 3,000 in the computer. So,
well, how do you lay this out in your book? Is there a story attached with each thought, or do you just open it up and it's a book of thoughts?
It is a book of thoughts. When I tried to figure out how to set it up, I said, well, everything else that I've thought about doesn't work. So why don't we just put some A's, some B's, some C's, some D's, and went through the alphabet.
Thoughts of the day, A to Z.
Yeah, because each of the thoughts I'd given a title over the years, and I just, use what's in the table of contents and pick a couple A's, a couple B's, a couple C's. And each thought that is in the book has the name of the person who contributed it and when it first appeared. So this first volume has things from 2005 up to 2023.
Got any favorite thoughts?
Well, my favorite is on page 111 of the book, and it's a picture of an absolutely marvelous little girl, about 3 years old or so, praying. And it's a prayer for Grandpa. And it says, "Dear God, please send some clothes for all those women on Grandpa's computer."
Oh, no! Oh! Give me another one. That's great.
Well, another one is I use this on a bunch of podcasts because it's nice and short. But Jennifer was taking her son Jimmy out to the grocery store. He was about 6, 7 maybe. And he picked a few things up, and they bought him, came home, and he rushed into the kitchen with a bag of groceries and dug around in it and took out a box of animal crackers and opened it and started spreading them out all over the kitchen table. She said, "Jimmy, what are you doing?" And he said, "Well, when we bought this box, it said that if the seal is broken, don't eat them, and I'm looking for the seal."
So did people contribute thoughts to you?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
people told you little stories and you just wrote them down.
Well, people who were on my list and sending these things out would send me something and say, "Hey, you might want to use this," or "Why don't you look at this?" And so it got to the point where I really didn't have to be very creative. I just had to be a good editor and used other people's materials. And I'm not complaining about that at all. And I think I had like 34 people contribute to this first volume.
Are people going to want a piece of your action if this sells like a bazillion copies?
Well, they gave me permission to use it, and I sent all the contributors a signed copy of the book so that they're definitely well aware that they are a contributor.
Yeah. So do you have a long list of email contacts?
Oh, yeah.
And now everybody knows about your book?
Well, I wouldn't say that. Some people can ignore anything I send out. I don't do as many as I used to, but I used to do a lot of presentations, and I would frequently use these things in, the presentations I gave simply to keep their attention. I am going out to the Los Angeles Times book fair in April. I got an invitation to that, and I got an absolutely eat-your-face-off review from the Los Angeles Times. I couldn't have done it better if I'd have written it myself.
What do you mean, eat your face off?
It was just a fantastic review from the Los Angeles Times. And so I'm going out. I've got a booth out there and, put on my carny hat and start hawking books. I had no idea there were so many websites that promoted books, and I've got them all, all over the place. I've got a great review from the Online Book Club, 5 stars.
Okay.
And I've got probably about 12 reviews on Amazon. Every one of them's 5 stars, and some of them are really great writing.
Okay. So that's all good.
I'd like to think so. But I'm also a realist who says that, no matter how good it is, that doesn't mean people are going to buy. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink.
That is so true. And then you have another volume coming out?
I will probably have 10 volumes before I'm done if I can make any money on the first couple.
That's great.
Yeah, because I've got enough material for 10 volumes at least.
Well, get to work. W.G. Williams, 20 Years of Internet Humor, Volume 1, and other interesting things. Thank you so much.
Well, I appreciate your time. Thank you for calling.
Barbara Torre was a resource room teacher for years, and now she's a teacher's assistant writing children's books. And we're going to talk about the adventures of Stinky and Frisky, the Dream, which was a long time in the making, right?
The concept came about 20 years ago. I've been writing it for a long, long time, but I just, decided to get everything published when I saw an advertisement on TV for it, because I never thought that I could do it. Like I wanted to get the pictures, I wanted to do the illustrations, and all of that never transpired. I took art lessons thinking, I can draw my pictures, but that didn't work out. And then when I saw the advertisement for Fulton, I said, let me do it this way. So it's like 20 years in the making.
Wow. Well, assuming you had children 20 years ago, because it's a children's book.
Yes, I did. I have 3 children, but I didn't write it for them. I wrote it for my cats. It's a book about my cats, and I wrote it to share my cats with the world is really why I did it.
Oh, so it had nothing to do with your children.
Nothing at all. My youngest is 44 years old, so it has nothing to do with children at all. I had my cats for, let them rest in peace. They're gone like 17 years now. But I had them, and I had them for a long time, my Stinky and Frisky. And it was just funny. One day they were indoor cats. They were sitting on a chair looking out the back door. And I said, what's going through their heads right now? Do they want to chase that leaf? Do they want to go after that squirrel that's out there? Like, what's going on in their brain? And that was what gave me the idea to write about Stinky and Frisky. So it just kind of flowed. It just was, wasn't like, oh, I want to write a book. I got to write it. It wasn't anything like that at all. I just said, what's going on in their heads? And that's kind of where it started.
So as you looked at them, did you imagine what they might be saying to each other?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Like, did you hear a dialogue?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Do you know Judith Vorst, a children's author? I don't think she's just a children's author. I think she writes other things as well.
Yeah.
But Judith Vorst, I love her children's books because she writes in the child's voice, So I have to see, in my head, think like, what would their conversation be like? They had personalities. They had individual personalities. And I liken it to like an Abbott and Costello or a Laurel and Hardy type, 2 different personalities. And so I, tried to think, well, what was Stinky's voice like? What is Frisky's voice like? To go with the Frisky is like the Perry Como of cats, if you know who Perry Como was. Yeah. And Stinky is like a little clownish, like the Costello, of the cats. So I had to try to do it that way. And I work with kids now, so I'm around kids, so I try to get into the kid's voice. For me, thinking the plot is more than anything.
Yeah.
The dialogue for me is easier,
What's the plot in The Dream?
I have other stories too that I'm writing. I have several. So I want the whole collection to be the adventures of Stinky and Frisky, and then this is The Dream. Well, Stinky was my little pudgy eater. He loved to eat, Stinky. He was round. He was round. He was overweight. He was 26 pounds. And in fact, I used to feed him downstairs in the basement to give him exercise to make him walk up and down the stairs. It's like kind of biographical in a way. Like the lady in the book, the lady is sleeping and Stinky is nudging her with his head, pushing up against her because he wants her to wake up because he wants to eat. And that's the God's honest truth. That's exactly what used to happen all the time. He would chew on my hair. He would nudge me. He wanted me to get up in the morning. So she doesn't wake up. He's waiting for her to get up, to stretch. That's her morning routine. And she's not waking up. And he doesn't understand why, but he's getting very hungry and he's nudging her. And he just falls asleep at the foot of the bed. And the next thing he knows, he's walking up the street full of restaurants, and the restaurants all have cat names like the Meow Inn or the Pate. And he wants to go in. He wants to go into one of the restaurants, and he realizes he has no money on him. So he's standing there thinking, oh, what should I do? What should I do? And a dog comes up the street and starts to chase him. And he chases him up this dark alley, and Stinky hides behind a garbage bin. And the dog, because it's the garbage bin, the dog can't smell the cat. So the dog, after a while, the dog leaves. And Stinky's like, what? What do I smell? And he looks in the garbage bin and he sees all the scraps from the restaurant. So he jumps in and he's eating and he's so happy he's finally eating. But he's so busy eating, he doesn't hear the garbage truck pull up. And he's so busy eating, he doesn't feel the garbage bin being turned upside down into the garbage truck. And he goes flying into the garbage truck, and the garbage truck takes off, goes down to the dump. And next thing he knows, he's being tumbled out of the garbage truck onto a big pile of garbage. And a bicycle is coming down on top of him. And all of a sudden he wakes up. and it's Frisky is jumping on him because Frisky wants to play. And they're wrestling, and Stinky's like, "What? What's going on?" Like he's all confused because when you first wake up and you're confused and everything, he's all confused. And then he realizes, "Oh, wait a minute, no, I'm home. I'm in the lady's bed." And then he goes over and he nudges her, and she wakes up, and he's happy because he knows that he's going to eat, and he doesn't have to go into a garbage dump to do it.
Barbara, that's so cute.
And that's the end of the story. And that's semi-biographical. I mean, not the garbage truck. That's not happening. But he used to nudge me all the time. And they were very, very, very special cats, my Stinky and Frisky. Yeah.
Aww.
Everybody knows. Anybody who knows me knows about Stinky and Frisky. I promised Stinky and Frisky that someday they will fly over the Thanksgiving Day parade. They will be so famous from the book.
I love that.
I did. Maybe that should be one of my stories.
Well, it could happen. I interviewed the Elf on the Shelf ladies when nobody even knew them. They wrote this book about this great tradition they had at home. And the next thing you know, Elf on the Shelf is in every home, and it's a Macy's balloon.
Is that how that started? I didn't even know, really.
Yeah, it was a mom and her two daughters. They invested everything.
Huh.
Yeah, for Elf on the Shelf,
Wow.
which I think he's a little snitch myself, but no, I'm kidding.
Some people love him and some people hate him.
Yeah, right. It's one or the other. But Stinky and Frisky, everyone will love. Now, does it work for you that you work in a school? Are you able to bring the book in and say, I can read it to you?
Well, you know what? I'm going to bring it to the principal and ask if she can do a write-up in it with the school newspaper, and I'm going to donate a hard copy to the library in the school.
Okay, sounds like a plan. So how many adventures you got coming up for Stinky and Frisky?
I have like 3, maybe 4 in my head.
Okay.
Actually, my very, very original one is done. I did, but I asked, which one should I, get published first? And my friends were like, do this with the Dream. So I did the Dream. But I have Stinky and Frisky Fly the Plane. That one is actually like their dream, like their imagining. That was when I first started, where I was doing their imagination.
Okay.
Now, the other ones are not going to be like that. The one that so that one is completed. Then I have I'm not sure of the exact title yet. I don't know if it's going to be Stinky and Frisky Run Away or Stinky and Frisky Meet Vinny. And what the concept behind that is Vinny the pit bull comes to live with them, and everybody, they know, Stinky and Frisky know they're adored. They know that they're spoiled and they're loved and they're adored. But when Vinny comes to live with them, all the attention is going to Vinny. Okay. And Stinky and Frisky are like, I don't think they love us anymore. and they run away. And I think I'm up to that point. And then I have to figure out what the problem is that they get into, that Vinny comes and helps them and saves them, and then they will become friends and they will love each other. And I would like to have like some kind of a moral or something to it, but I don't know. So I'm in the middle of doing that one.
All right.
But I have several. And then I have Stinky and Frisky Go to School. I have that one, Stinky and Frisky Go to School. And I also have Stinky and Frisky at the Beach.
Great. All right. Barbara Torre, The Adventures of Stinky and Frisky, The Dream. I'll talk to you again soon, I'm sure.
Okay. I appreciate your phone call.
Charles B. Carroll served in the U.S. Army for 13 years, and during that time, he was deployed to Kosovo, several times to Iraq and Kuwait. As a result, he suffers with PTSD, but he has found relief and comfort, like so many others, through the healing power of writing. The name of his book, The Dagger of Chaos.
I started writing a couple of years ago when I was in Arkansas. I wrote a little bit as a kid. I wrote short stories, and I wrote short stories while I was in college, just personal issues. But I started writing this to help me with my PTSD since I was deployed a few times with the Army. And so I did that, and I kept going and be like, I got a good story, and just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then I finally decided last year to go ahead and get it published to see, where can I go with that.
So tell me how Dagger of Chaos came about.
I actually started writing a different story, but it became way too dark because, like I said, with the PTSD, then it was getting just way, way too dark and put me down to a worse situation than where I was at. So then I started writing a more comical story. And I let my sister read and says, hey, what do you think about this one? She goes, you're trying too hard to be funny. It sounds more like an action adventure story and it sounds really good. So go that route. So I said, okay. So I rewrote the story and then I said, hey, what does this sound? And then she goes, hey, this sounds way better. I really like it. Keep going. Let's see what else you can do with it. And so that's why I kept going.
Okay, so we're on a quest for revenge. Your main character, Isaac, meets his companions, and they go on this quest while being hunted by an evil force.
Yes.
So tell me what happens.
Well, Isaac is the one who has the dagger of chaos, so everybody is looking for the dagger of chaos. So what happens is that this you got demons who are looking for it, you've got an evil undead wizard who's looking for it, and so the evil undead wizard conjures up these death wraiths that are chasing him throughout the story, trying to recover the dagger. And so there's really good stories and everything going through telling you how he's escaping these death wraiths that are just chasing him throughout the entire story.
Give me an example.
They're going through the marsh and they're trying to get away, and then Zaviera, who's an actual spider, sets up a trap, and one of the death wraiths gets stuck, and they can get away with that. But there's 3 more coming at them, and so they're going through through the marsh and getting away with that, and then that's how they come into they meet one of the demons in the marsh by accident and get trapped. But then that's where they also learn how to use their weapons, and they learn how to get proficient with defending themselves, and they go into that side quest. And then they're getting chased again whenever they're meeting the wizard they're supposed to meet to help them to find the evil wizard they're looking for. And so that's when it goes into the sad part of the story, when one of the companions gets hit by a deadly arrow.
Do you wrap this all up in one book?
I wrap up this portion of it in one book, but there's actually going to be multiple books in this series.
Can you tell me how writing helps you with your PTSD?
It actually gets out my anxiety, my frustration, and everything like that. I can put it on paper, so that way I can function normal in everyday life. Because without writing and whatnot, I had a really hard time being around kids and being around playgrounds. And with this way, I can put out my anxiety and I can get all that out, and then I can go and be around playgrounds and take my kids and go do functions with my kids.
What is it about being around kids and playgrounds that gives you so much anxiety?
Since I was doing convoy security and one of my deployments, I had a really tough time with kids because over in the Middle East, they use kids. On one of our convoys, we were actually driving and you saw a little girl standing on the side of the road and she's actually counting the vehicles. And then once the last vehicle drove by, she takes off running and then tells people. And then further up the road is when you get blown up. And then they used kids, but they would sit on top of a bridge. And while you're driving, then they would drop grenades over on top of the gunner's hatch, which is why we had to start putting stuff on top of the hatches for the gunners. And so that's why I don't trust kids anymore, because they're all smiling and laughing. And then you have a kid to come up and tell you that if our leader tells us to kill you, we will.
So were you able to work through some of this anxiety while writing The Dagger of Chaos?
I am. A lot of my anxiety is coming out along with my the fear, the sadness. I put a lot of emotion into the actual book just so that way I can get most of that all out, because it is very frustrating when you go to your kids' function at the school and then you step in and go and you have to look at your wife and say, hey, I need to step outside. This is getting to be too much. I need to go catch some air. And so that was really difficult. And when your kids say, hey, Daddy, can I go play at the playground? Can you take me to the playground? And you have a hard time saying, I can't go because you're anxious and whatnot because of your PTSD, because about being around other kids. And then when they said, hey, can we go to the pumpkin patch? And there's a bunch of kids that's running around, and then one kid grabs your leg and your heart stops. I put all that stuff into writing, and so that's how it helps out.
I'm just curious, is there any scene or any chapter in Dagger of Chaos that illustrates that anxiety that you're feeling?
There is one where it's in the second chapter whenever Isaac's dad goes to hell, and you see him that he's in there, and he's surrounded by all this fog, and he hears this looks like a hoof on cobblestone, but he doesn't know where it's coming from, and you can really feel and read the anxiety coming out of the pages about what he's feeling.
So, and in turn, that makes you feel better, like you feel like you're getting it out.
Right, and that because it puts that what I feel inside when that what actually happens, what I feel like when I'm going to all these different places, and that's how I feel when my anxiety kicks in.
So how are you telling people about your book?
I tell a lot of friends, I tell a lot of family members. I am doing social media as well, so I am trying to get my book out like that as well.
I think it's good to let people know that, yeah, you can really work out some of your stuff by just sitting down and writing.
Mm-hmm. Because writing lets you get out a lot of different things that you can't do because people have a stigma against soldiers who are coming back from a combat zone and whatnot, and like, oh my gosh, we can't trust them. Oh my gosh, they're dangerous. And so you put everything on paper so that way you can get out your frustrations and everything on paper and write it in a story. Whereas in reality, you have to bottle everything up and you can't show people what you truly feel.
What's next?
What's next is I'm actually working on the sequel to the Dagger of Chaos, which is called The Sword of Chaos. And that one is actually going to be, there's going to be some fighting and some battle scenes in it, but it's mostly a chasing story where Isaac and his friends are being chased throughout the entire story. So we're going that. And basically, this one's going to be an homage to my favorite author.
And who's that?
Dean Koontz. If it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be here today.
All right. Thank you so much, Charles B. Carroll, The Dagger of Chaos.
Thank you very much, and you have a good day.
Destini Robes is the mother of a newborn and a 4-year-old and never even thought about writing until her husband, who serves in the U.S. Army, wound up far away from home. And she woke up one morning with a story ready to roll. It is entitled Daddy is Coming Home.
Like, it was a wake up and boom, like I wrote, and it was only because my son and my husband, the way they kept in contact over the deployment was my husband would find books online that interest my son and he would read it over the FaceTime call on the laptop. And so they did a lot of like chatting like that to kind of keep his interest because at the time he was only 2.5. So little kids don't like to sit by the phone just staring and doing nothing. So he would constantly find more books that our son was interested in. And at the end of every phone call, he'd be like, okay, like Daddy's coming home soon. And he just kept saying it to our son. So each day our son was like, oh, he's coming home soon. He's coming home soon. So that kind of made me think of the whole making our son a book to have. It was never in my intention necessarily like to publish it or anything like that. But my husband was like, yes, go for it. Because there's other kids out there that has also experienced their parents being on a deployment.
How long was he away?
He was away for a whole year, actually a little over a year. It was just about 13 months.
What was it like watching him on FaceTime with his dad?
I loved it because I loved that they were able to still keep the connection going, even though like there was distance in between them. And it was like I had a dream of the whole scenario. And then I woke up, I wrote it, and then I went right back to sleep because I knew my son was going to wake up soon. And then at like maybe 9 o'clock, I called my husband, and there was a time difference. And so he was just about to go to sleep, and I told him all about it. And he was like, oh, absolutely. And he's always drawing, like he'll send us monthly cards when he was away. And it'd be like a kind of like a picture book scenario of when he's coming back and the whole thing. So I kind of had like the imagery there, but I just made the words put into play. So when we did it with Fulton Books, I kind of try to describe it just as it was with both him drawing it and like the relationship that they were having together.
Are the pictures in the book?
Some of them are. So there's in the book, there's one photo of my husband drawing like a turtle or something. That was also something that my husband sent over to him was because my son loves animals. So to also tie him in, he always used to draw him like little pictures of animals and would show him different animals and stuff that was on the base where he was stationed.
Sweet. How's the story go?
So in the beginning of the book, my husband is already across seas and it's going through the holidays. During the whole process of the book, it's them communicating, whether it's FaceTime or messages back and forth, but more so like voice messages since the connection's not great, coming from two different countries. My son is anticipating and excited for his father to come home back to us. And there's different scenarios where the call drops, but my husband creates like a teddy bear, which he did right before he left. He created like a Build-A-Bear teddy bear, and it has his voice in it, and it's dressed in this army wear. He sends the bear over, and it has his voice in it. And around Christmas, that was the gift that he gave our son. And in the book, it also shows him giving our son in a box, a present box, because he wasn't physically here to be the present.
That's so cute.
In time for Christmas, which we did anticipate him being back for Christmas, but he wasn't. So in the book, he opens up the box. He's really excited that the present is a teddy bear, which he loves animals. And he plays it, and it's his voice basically letting him know, like, Daddy will be home soon. And then as you go along in the story, you'll see another FaceTime call, us celebrating his father's birthday over the FaceTime call. And because he can't eat the cake, our son is eating the cake. We call him Bear. We call him Connor Bear. His first name's Connor. We call him Connor Bear. So that's why he sent him also a bear in a military uniform. And our son eats the whole cake, and it's like a little buntini cake that we had in person as well as in the book. He eats the cake and he's like laughing, like, sorry, like you don't get to eat it, but I get to eat it for you. And as you go on in the book, Daddy finally comes back home, but in a voice message, our son is letting him know, like, hey, like, I know you're coming back home soon. I now have a gift for you after you giving us all of these gifts and the sacrifice of like not being around us. And when we get to the base, my husband is like, what did you want to give me? What was the gift? And he's wearing like a bow, and he's like, I'm the gift, silly. He's like, I'm your gift. And genuinely, my husband was bawling his eyes off because you have this little human that's so excited to see you. And now like he's huge in comparison to when he left. He wasn't talking as much. So, and that's the end of the book, us being together as a family.
That is so sweet. That is so sweet. You must know so many people, that, their husbands get deployed, the wives are left home, the kids.
Yes.
Yeah. This had to strike a chord with people you know.
Oh, absolutely. We have so many military friends that have young kids. And I mean, I feel like I was lucky because I only had one, but I have people that have like 3 and 4 younger kids under the age of 5. And the kids don't really understand exactly why their parents are leaving for so long. And even though you tell them they're at work, you don't realize when the parents come back and you let them know, like, oh, Daddy has to go to work. They actually feel that again. They're like, oh my goodness, like, are they leaving again for a really long time? And you have to reiterate and explain, no, they're here. But it does touch heartstrings. And so many of like our military friends was just like, oh my goodness, like this is perfect to explain the process, but still let them know, like, hey, we're coming back. Like, yes, Daddy's working or Mommy's working, but we're coming back and we'll be back home soon.
Is there a place, on base where this book can be read or, where people can find it?
Actually, it can be. My husband actually wanted to talk about that with Fulton because they have the stores where everybody goes on base to like shop.
Yeah.
And he was like, it would be a hit if it was actually able to be inside the stores and not just on like Amazon and Barnes and Nobles and other places like that, because there's so many people that live on base that would really value having a book to read to their kids that explains this. And I even have friends and stuff that aren't in the military that, like, for instance, one of my friends, her husband is an NFL player, and he leaves for a lump sum of time and comes back, and she's like, oh, like, my daughter absolutely loves this book because, again, it's reiterating that daddy will come back even though he's working and he's gone.
All right. Thank you so much. Destini Robes, Daddy is coming home.
Thank you.
Timothy Bradley Reinhold is finishing up his film and communications degree. He already has a BA in philosophy, and when he's not in school, he writes poetry. The name of his book, A Shadow of Light, A Memory of Hope. Now, Timothy, you became a poet at a fairly young age, right?
My first poem ever was in 8th grade, and it was called One World. And it was something like, let me see if I can remember it. Butterflies get along, and frogs sit on the lily pad. Flowers bloom and ever gloom, and in the darkness we shall find that humanity is rife with terror. But if we focus more on harmony, like we see in nature, we can be one world. An end to war, an end to suffering, an end to famine, and beginning of feast. We can be one world. Now, I can't say that was the greatest poem in the world, but I was in 8th grade, so that's where I got my love for poetry.
That's not bad.
And it was the 90s, you know? Well, like back when Nirvana was still going. And,
right.
you know?
Yeah, I do know.
So I wrote some poetry 10 years ago, and then I just stopped writing poetry. I went into a real dark phase of my life. And then all of a sudden this past year, I'm not trying to preach religion to anybody, but I had a come to Jesus moment, literally. And, you know, I believe all faiths are valid. I believe everybody, no matter what they believe, I believe that's valid. And I've actually written a second book on that that'll be debuting at the LA Times Book Festival. But the point is, I had a come to Jesus moment, and I said, God, make me an instrument of your will. And all of a sudden, this poetry started pouring forth for me. And I shared it with some friends, and they said, you should publish. And I was like, no. And then I shared it with my aunt, who has a great love for poetry. And she said, you should publish. So when I hear the same thing from a couple different sources and they're all saying the same thing, I usually listen, because that's usually a good indication of somebody knowing something that I don't know. And, you know, it's hard to really understand what impact your own work has on people until you get feedback. And that was the feedback I was getting. So my aunt actually did the editing. I sent her hundreds of poems, and she actually did the editing, narrowed it down to a good offering of 70-something poems that would be a good entry into the world of literature. And that's what the book became.
I'd like for you to share a poem that stands out for you.
I'll actually do two off the dome. So the first one is called In the Forest. And I've been doing some poetry open mics, so I've been memorizing some of my poetry. So this one's called In the Forest, and it's about grief and suffering and finding a healing hand, whether it be faith or just a good friend, to really help you through the grief. And it goes like this. In the forest of despair, you saw me kneeling, crying there. In hollowed woods I cried anew, o'er my loved ones as was due. For in my heart I saw them still, like looking through a windowsill. Of stained glass panes of colored glass, I cried for them, for they had passed. You comforted me, you held me close. Your care for me was like a rose, the flower I loved that used to grow outside our house all in a row. So thank you much for being true when I was sad, when I was blue. Stay with me and smile a while. for you have saved me from my trial. Good friends are rare, and this I know, for hardship hurts what my heart you sow. Into the darkness once more I go, but not alone, you make it so. And down the path up to the lane I see my house, but not in vain. For now I have some company to dry my tears and comfort me.
That's beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you. I wrote that in about 10
Oh,
minutes.
jeez. You're doing open mics?
Yes, ma'am.
How's that working out?
It's working really well. I've had a lot of, I made a lot of friends in the poetry community, seen some really great poets at work, really been inspired to up my game and become a better poet myself. And I've gotten some fantastic feedback on some of the poems that I've done, and it's been very rewarding. And if any of your listeners have never been to an open mic for poetry, I encourage them to go. I mean, yes, there's all kinds of people that show up to those things, and there's all kinds of poets. So it's not for the faint of heart.
Right.
But I think you will be illumined by some of the gracefulness that you will witness verbally, if you will.
I've interviewed other poets, and I always suggest, are there any open mics, where you are? They're not everywhere.
No, Orlando has tons. Like, I can go to an open mic every week if I want to.
How do you find an open mic?
So I literally just Googled open mics for poetry near me.
There you go. Right?
It's really simple, and they have them all over the country and world and stuff like that. And,
Yeah.
Like in Florida, we have them all up and down the coast. We have them in Jacksonville. We have them in Tampa. We have them in Orlando. But you have to understand, Orlando is a city of 5 to 7 million people. So if you're looking hard for a poetry scene, in Orlando, at least, it's not that hard to find, because if you've got that many millions of people there, you're going to have entertainment of some sort, one way or another. Let me give you one more poem. Let me give you the title poem to the book.
Okay,
and the
go ahead.
title of the book is A Shadow of Light, A Memory of Hope.
Okay.
And it goes like this. In the rising darkness, I see something fragile and pale. I see a hope once diminished, returning from long lost. In stillness did it slumber, awaiting this blessed day. For a shadow of hope lay before me, reminding me once more of a memory of light. And in that dawning brilliance, I look deep into myself and realize that hope and light lie within us all. For even in the depths of despair, I did not walk alone. The abyss did not take me, the light of hope it did. Perhaps more cruel, for it forced me to endure things I wish I could forget. But all bad tidings do be, upon further examination, from once great time and space, the way we know we're winning, our victory, our grace. For if we were not winning, there would be no need for such strife to happen. To keep us humble and honest, the pattern must endure. With hope and love come loss and grief, dancing as if on a puppeteer strings. And yet I cling to hope and light, those silver linings. I hope you too can ignore the dark and focus on the light of hope, which brilliantly remains.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Any advice for aspiring writers out there before you go?
Write 100 pages of something.
Okay.
Just 100 pages of something. You can start off small, right? Like, it doesn't have to be one solid 100-page story or anything like that. Do short snippets. Write a 10-page story, short story. Learn screenplays, because screenplays are a great way to tell a story, because screenplays are in the format of the location where something is happening, interior or exterior, and time of day. That's just one line. And then the next section is the action section, which is who, what, where, when, and why is happening. but as far as the camera can see, right? And then the next section is the dialogue. And that's just who's saying what, when, and in what order. And that's all you have to do to tell a story. And you can fill up 10 pages of a screenplay real easy. It doesn't take much. And if you do that 10 times, you'll have 10 screenplays, 10 short stories, 10 whatever. And you'll have discovered a lot about yourself that you probably didn't know was in there. And from that point on, you'll have a better grasp of what you really stand for and what really inspires you. And you can move mountains. You know, the Bible says, if you have faith like a mustard seed, you can move mountains. And I really believe it's true. And faith guides me in what I do. But at the same time, you have to understand that not everybody believes the same thing as you. No two people believe in the same God, because God is a concept that is unique to each of us. So in reality, it's whatever you believe in, as long as you believe in something. Use that inner light to drive you forward and try to culminate yourself in an effort to better the world. Because at the end of the day, I think most people want to leave the world a better place than they found it. And that's why I write poetry.
Oh my goodness. Timothy Bradley Reinhold, A Shadow of Light, A Memory of Hope. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
J.D. Vensky works in an assisted living home in Nebraska. And about 10 years ago, while she was still in college, she wrote her first book and then wrote several more, including Wine Country. Tell us how your writing journey began.
I was in college. I was doing medical assisting, and I had a story, and it was just in my mind. I think it's just from reading a lot of fiction and watching a lot of true crime on ID TV, and I don't know, I just have a knack for wanting to write something like that. And unfortunately, it's with a different publisher. It went through a different publisher, but I was writing when I was in college. My first book, technically. Wine Country is about my fifth book, or my fourth.
How about the rest of the books? Did you publish them?
I technically published them, but they're on Kindle, Amazon self-publishing, because let's just say we didn't have a good standing with the publishing company that I did my first book with. Let's just per se, apparently there was some legality issues with somebody else who took them to court. And so I decided I didn't want to be initiated with them anymore. So I kind of took myself out from them, and I did Kindle self-publishing for a while.
And how was that?
It was good. It's just that it's a lot of work to put into. Like, you literally have to put in hours of the day to, like, a real job, to do the whole editing process yourself, make sure you didn't miss anything, and pick out the cover photo yourself. And all they do on that website is fit it, and they print it when you're ready to order it and put it together. And it was a little messy for me per se, but I rather just kind of have a publishing company where it's kind of a cleaner route.
So how'd you end up at Fulton?
Well, it got to the point, because I have two kids at home and being a mom and also another job, I figured, I just kind of need a little help. I don't mind asking for a little help to get my book going. And also I needed promotion more than anything.
Right.
And I know that required to go through a publisher and do everything else over, but with somebody different.
Okay, so Wine Country was already written when you submitted it to Fulton.
Yes, it was technically on Kindle, self-publishing website, but I said, it needs to be professionally promoted and out there.
Okay. So all of your books, are they alike in any way?
Not exactly. I did publish two nonfiction books. One's about my stepmom who overcame drugs and alcohol, but she died. And so I had to finish it from my perspective,
okay,
which was kind of hard. And then my other one is about trauma, but also it's out there because I want to be able to help people who have faced domestic abuse and, sexual abuse. And so that's why I wrote it. And so, yeah, it's kind of a trauma core per se.
And then this one is completely different. It's kind of funny. You got a main character, Monty Ray, which I
Yes.
think is really funny. Monty Ray and Monty Ray Sr.
Yeah.
But then this is kind of a mystery. Something, there's murder.
So the story is about an insurance guy he helped his friend build an insurance company from the ground up, and that's what he went to college for. He wanted to move from his hometown in Pobo, which I completely made up. People have asked me, is that a real town? I said, no, I completely made this up. I mean, it's fiction. So I wanted to put something, something that would totally catch them off guard. I love catching people off guard, but it also makes the story very interesting and puts you at the edge of your seat, or, hey, I want to know more about this. So him and his friend built a company, an insurance company. So he gets a call from one of the realtors, not realizing that he has a vineyard that was passed down from his family. But however, his mom and dad never wanted to do anything with it because they didn't want to be associated with his great grandfather, who turns out he did murder people in the vineyard to feed the vineyard itself.
To feed the vineyard itself. What are we talking about? Fertilizer?
No. So how the vineyard has stayed alive for so long, it's because it's an actual creature. It's a plant, almost humanoid like creature that feeds off of those that it kills.
Wow.
So it's kind of like a vampire per se. If you think about it, it's kind of like a vampire. It's a plant vampire. So pretty much it drains everything from a human when you feed it.
Nice.
Somebody. And that's how these red grapes, these grapes are red. They are just plain bright red, and it's from the blood from the people it has fed off of through the centuries.
Oh my gosh.
It's alive. It's just alive, and that's where it just kind of, people are starting to just kind of, like Monty Ray especially, is just kind of figuring out how this vineyard has stayed alive for so many years.
Do people know that you're a writer, that you've got books out there?
And this is the part where the promotion thing kind of came in, because not a lot of people really knew unless I told them. I know I used my Facebook a lot to tell people about it and promote it, as well as put my pictures up. I know I use a lot of platforms to try and get it out there. And that's where kind of Fulton Books kind of came into play with the whole strategizing of getting it out there. Like Barnes & Noble, now it's out there, and as well as I did just interviews and being able to talk to people about it, and people getting me out there as well.
So interviews like this one?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I've also have put my books out there a little bit with my own podcast that I have. It's called Battlefield, and it's mostly just kind of life coaching stuff and self-help. And I've kind of mentioned that, especially when I wrote my trauma core, as well as I wrote the rest of my stepmom's book about overcoming drugs and alcohol, that I've kind of mentioned a lot of that, of my books. So, and maybe I am a little scared. I mean, every human is a little scared about rejection.
Yeah.
Like no one's gonna really care. Because I guess when it comes to books and actually selling, or, making it big time, all they want to care about is the people who are actually up there on the pedestal more than, well, myself. So for example, you got Stephen King, who's way up there on the pedestal. So are they going to choose me or Stephen King?
It's not between you and Stephen King. This is just you saying, hey, to your friends, to people you know, I'm going to be at the local library, or I'm going to be at this coffee shop, or I'm going to be at Barnes & Noble, and come out. You know what I mean? You can't even think about Stephen King.
The thing is, when it comes to me fighting, I'm very a passionate fighter. So, and I don't want to shut anybody off when it comes to, oh, so you're throwing a temper tantrum because we won't help you promote your books, even though you're our local author here in our actual town, and we should be proud of that. And also, I'm being very blunt when I say this, and it really sucks. People don't like it when I say this, but I'm going to say it anyway.
Go ahead. Money
Money talks. So it's like, all right, awesome, thanks. But if that's all people want to care about, that's great. Then peace out. Then you don't deserve me.
What do you mean money talks? Like getting people to come out?
Oh, because I know some places want a certain percentage, or they're like, hey, no, you gotta pay us if you want to be here.
No, you don't want to go there. Do not go to that place that wants a percentage. How about the place where you work?
Well, I could talk to my boss about that, because we have a lot of elderly people who love to read. We have our own library in where we are, but I have spoken to some ladies one-on-one, and they ask me what I do, and I say, well, I don't just do this. I'm not just a mom, but I'm an author. And they get really excited. And then they ask me, and I said, well, you can find it on Kindle publishing or Barnes & Noble website. And so it makes me feel good that I could just at least tell them one-on-one for sure.
Yeah.
But yes, and they always ask me, how many books have you written? I tell them, well, I've written 6. I'm on my 7th one.
Okay. Are you going to stick with Fulton?
Oh, yes. They have been so kind to me. They've been so good. I mean, I can't tell you how appreciative I am of them, especially with effective communication and how they've communicated back and forth with me. And if I haven't heard from them for a while, I email them or I call them. I say, hey, I haven't heard from you guys. Is there anything going on? Do I need to do anything on my end? And I really appreciate that they give back to me and what they've done, especially promoting wise and getting me out there. I can't tell you, I really can't. It's over the moon. Like, appreciation is an understatement.
Oh.
I mean, it's above and beyond what they do.
What number is Wine Country?
It's 5.
And number 6 and number 7 are going to be published through Fulton. So maybe we'll get to talk again. Also, your podcast, what kind of following do you have?
Mostly just people who are just looking for somebody who's very authentic, and also has gone through a lot of past traumas, as well as they're going through it, and they just need somebody who's out there who can relate to them. I talk about a lot of like life coaching things and self-development, because I've been through life coaching and self-development myself to get on the right track of life. But everybody has a starting point in their life, and they just need somebody out there who, they get it, and they just can listen and be like, all right, I feel a lot better, but how can I make myself better? Or how can I heal just like she has in my own way?
Would you say writing has been therapeutic for you?
Oh, very therapeutic. You have no idea.
Well, there's your hook on your podcast. Talk about those books. Talk about how it's helped you. Talk about how much better you feel after you're able to sit down and write, whether it's writing about, what's really going on in your life, or whether you're escaping into a fantasy world.
Exactly. That's what I have done, especially with the 2 books that I wrote about, the drugs and then the trauma core of domestic abuse. I have used that a lot due to the fact that I know it's an ongoing thing and people need to hear it.
So there you go. I mean, your podcast could be like your best tool to get people to read your books.
I agree.
All right. JD Vensky, Wine Country. Thank you so much.
Well, I really appreciate you taking your time, and I really appreciate the fact that you're willing to give me a chance and talk to me. I really do. And I think it was great. And we should do this again sometime.
All right. Ranay Richards is our next author. Her pen name might sound familiar, but it is actually the middle names of her 2 children. Ranay did HR work for most of her 40-year career, and in 2023, she published her first book with Paige. Now she's back with her second, entitled The Path to Paradise. So you've been writing for some time. It just took you a while to publish, right?
I started writing way back when I was, even in high school, I enjoyed writing, but when I was about 19 or 20, I was in a job where it was a little boring. And so what I did to pass the time was to write short stories, and I would share them with the other, employees. And they always said, wow, Sharon, this is wonderful. You should write. And it was just a lot of fun, and it passed the time. And, I got a lot of feedback, but I really didn't do a whole lot. At that time, they're mostly little short stories just for fun. But as I got older, I started writing I've written 2 books now. So my first book, I started writing over 50 years ago.
Wow. What was the name of that book?
Yeah, it was called Bound by Secrets.
How'd you make out with that?
I enjoyed it so much, and I had such good positive feedback from everybody. And they kept saying, you need to write another book. This is wonderful. I love this. And of course, it made me feel good too. And there was a little story to it, and some of it was based on truth, and some of it was most of it was fiction. But I was so thrilled that I wanted to do another one. And my sister actually encouraged me to write my second book. I have a twin sister.
Oh, are you connected the way twins are supposedly connected?
we're very, very close. And she just recently moved back to Iowa, so I miss her, but we probably talk 4, 5, sometimes 6 times a day.
Wow.
I know people say, what?
Where did Path to Paradise come from?
Well, my sister and I, when we were children, we saw a movie, and there was just a little glimpse of it that we both remembered. And we were probably about 9 at the time, but it stayed with us all these years. And although it's not the way my story reads, it gave me an idea how to write this book. I wrote the ending before I wrote the beginning.
Tell me about this book.
The Path to Paradise, well, it's a story about a lonely woman who experiences a tragic near-death experience. And so they just figure she's not going to make it, but she has a remarkable recovery. And so when she comes back from this experience, her whole life changes immediately. And it changes her personality. Everything about her has changed. And not only that, everybody she comes in contact with, she also enriches their lives. It's basically a story, several stories within a story. And so one of the first people she encounters, she gets interested in painting. So she goes to this art gallery and she sees this painting, and the art gallery director, they just have an instant connection. He's just a wonderful man. He sort of takes her under his wing, and they become almost best friends because she's been very, very lonely. So she doesn't have a lot of friends. But she starts going there often because she's so fascinated by this one painting. And when she goes back to her job, she runs across a man that looks a lot like him. And she says, wow, they almost could be related. So she starts checking into this person and realizes that there is actually a connection there. So they become very, very close.
Okay. And do we follow this storyline throughout the book?
In and out, but the other ones are more romantic. There's a lot of romance in the book, and it's just like people who are older and they think they're never going to have love again, or never have had love, or are trapped in a, loveless marriage. And so she is the one that is an instigator into actually bringing them happiness and letting them fulfill their, love life.
Oh,
so,
sweet.
Yeah, someone said, when they read it, they said, wow, this is just like stories within a story. And it is.
Yeah.
So it's fast paced. I write fast, and there's a lot of information, short chapters. I'm one of these people who like a lot of adventure and suspense and intrigue and lots of unusual things that you wouldn't expect in a romance so much. But it's it's a very, very surprise ending, and people are shocked by it, actually.
Okay. So where do you tell people about your books?
Well, I have Facebook, naturally, right. And I'm in a few little groups that, around here that I keep in touch with. But for the most part, it's family, and they tell their friends or that type of thing. So as far as the marketing, it hasn't probably been the best. But yeah, I think a lot of people would probably enjoy it, but they just aren't familiar with the name Ranay Richards or, my writing style. So there is a Barnes & Noble. I could probably reach out to them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I send out huge Christmas letters with information about my book. So a lot of people have learned from that. So it's kind of like a newsletter in a sense. But
yeah, that's great. So what's next?
The thing of it is, I have so many ideas.
Yeah.
But I actually haven't started a new one yet because I was just waiting for this to see how it takes off.
Okay.
But I get so many ideas. Sometimes even when I'm dreaming at night, I wake up and I thought, I got to remember this. Yeah, it's fun. I've just been thrilled with this opportunity. And, it's something I've been doing all my life. So it's nice to actually see it in print. You know what I mean? It's like, wow. The first time I saw the books delivered to my door and I opened them up, I hooped and hollered and jumped up and down. And I mean, it was just exciting to be able to hold my book and see it, that it's actually a book for other people can read. Yeah.
I love it.
Pretty fun.
All right.
Pretty fun.
Ranay Richards, The Path to Paradise. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate your help.
We hope you enjoyed this edition of the Reader House Author Roundtable, where authors from all walks of life come together to discuss the trials, tribulations, and triumphs of publishing their books. I'm Alice Stockton Rossini. We hope to see you back here every Saturday night at 8 o'clock, or listen to our podcast anytime on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, TuneIn, and PodServe, just to name a few. The Author Roundtable is sponsored by ReaderHouse Online Bookstore, where independent new authors come first.